Meeting. It's wonderful to see everybody tonight at the meeting. We can begin with the pledge tonight. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. So for tonight's meeting, our first agenda item is to approve the minutes from September 20th from last month's meeting. Did everyone get a chance to review the minutes? I can give people a minute to look it over if you haven't had a chance to do so. All right, and can I have a motion to approve? Okay, Mary, thank you. Can I get a second? Chris, I saw your hand raised as well, so I'll take that. All in favor? Okay, great. So let's get started with tonight's agenda. I will start with the subcommittees. Did all the subcommittees get a chance to meet? Great. So let's begin then with the communications subcommittee. Who's going to be leading that for us tonight?
Sure, I can share out some information about the Communications Subcommittee. So the Communications Subcommittee, we met on October 11th at 7. And what we discussed was trying to figure a way to capture the work, student voices, and perhaps creating some sort of video of like a recording of maybe teachers and students, asking them some questions, giving the questions to participants in advance. Why does DEI work? What does it matter to you? What draws you into the work? Why do you want to help? And so those were some of the things that we discussed about perhaps doing. And I think, with some of our action items, Shima was going to be sharing out with a larger DEI group. And so Emma and Rachel talked about maybe being some of the first to record. And we reached out to Patrice, who is part of the communications team. And she, said that they're actually working on some videos from the district. So I think we just need a little bit more communication with her, but she's unable to join us at the next meeting, which is going to happen on Thursday, November 9th, again at 7. And if anyone else from our meeting wants to join and tell us a little bit more, feel free to add.
Mike, I see your hand.
Yeah, thanks, Leah. I think you captured most of the conversation. I know that I'm hoping that we can, sorry. One of the conversations we had was the allocation of communication hours in terms of making video clips and movies with BOCES. So I think in conversation with Dr. Wiles, we can probably revisit that and see where we are with the existing projects, and maybe we can pivot and see if we can add some of what we talked about to that. So I'm excited about it. And it was also about highlighting some of the equity team members in each of the buildings, interviewing members in each of the buildings, so everybody could get to know who they are, and then they could provide the updates of what's happening in the building. So almost like an update for the district by the equity team members, but also introducing them to the district, that these are the people who you can go to who are contacts with this best practices and the work that's happening. So that was also, I think, part of what we were trying to accomplish.
Yeah, that sounds great. That definitely is going to help communicate out to the general public. Any other comments or questions for the communications subcommittee? Okay, great. Thank you. Next, we have community engagement.
I can do that. We met, and we actually kind of met once, and then we revisited a lot of things again last night at our fireside chat. One of the things that we had spoken about before was attendance at PTA meetings. I know I attended one. I believe Chris attended the Farnsworth meeting, and just to let parents know that, you know, we're here if they have any questions or need anything, how much we'd like them to be part of this. We had a fireside chat on Friday afternoon. We had another one last night, and we didn't have anybody stop in. And we talked about how can we better let people know what's going on, that we're doing these, and talking about, you know, on the district calendar, letting the PTAs know that they can put it on their calendar. And then a suggestion was made that perhaps we want to do like a survey or a Google form or a Survey Monkey, and let people, if they have questions, they can ask us. We could have a virtual meeting, a remote meeting, and answer those questions. So to advertise that at 7:00 on such and such a night, we'll be there, we'll be on, join us, and we can go through and answer the questions that were submitted. So that was one of the things that came up. So how can we better engage the community in the DEI effort? We have one of our student reps. She went to the high school PTA meeting, and she had a lot of good things to offer as far as the student perspective, and that she really feels that students want to be engaged in this and want to be involved in this, and that would really, she sees things already turning around in the high school, and she feels things are better and kids are more apt to talk to a teacher. So we had some positive feedback from her, and we're ready to move forward. Leah, you can jump in, or Chris.
Beth, I saw your hand first there.
Oh, I just have a question. I'm supposed to be a part of that subcommittee, but I've never gotten an email to invite me to the meeting, so I have no idea when they are meeting.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, Beth. I thought you were in the communications. There was a Survey Monkey before we started, and that's, I apologize if I didn't get your name, or maybe
Yeah, I mean, I was
email
put
it
into the
wrong.
community engagement group, but I haven't gotten any kind of communication to take part in those meetings. So I just want to know if I can get added to that so that I can join in and add where I can. And I love the idea of letting PTAs know, because I think that's one of the ways that parents are most communicated with, especially at the elementary level. I know our PTA sends out pretty frequent messages on their social media channels and sends note home as well. So it's a great way to engage parents.
Yeah. So Beth, sorry you were left off of that. Absolutely, that will be taken care of. And I agree. PTA has been notified last year. When we had liaisons serving on the PTA committee PTA meetings for each building, the elementary school buildings. That was something that was shared out, those upcoming dates. And from my recollection, the time and date of the fireside chats was a very well sought after information by the attendees of the meeting. So I agree. That's a very, very good way to do it. I think that the ideas, Mary, that your group has put out to get that information out is also great. I think the remote idea is one that I know that we talked about last year, of that being an option, whether or not it would be in lieu of an in-person fireside chat, but definitely an option for many people who can't make it to an in-person. The turnout we had for the Progression Partners were always very good, and maybe part of that was because it was a remote situation. So I think that the committee seemed to respond fondly to that option for them.
Yeah, I think we were talking about it being in addition to the in-person, because we don't want to lose that that personal one-to-one meeting with people, and being able to sit down and talk with them. But for people who can't come, or people who might be uncomfortable, coming in, we thought that this would be a good option to do. And maybe we will reach more people that way.
Definitely. Dr. Wiles?
Two things I can offer in terms of advertising the fireside chats. our communications office and I work together to send out a message to all families just about every other Friday. And so if we have those dates, we can put it as the top item, and we could also link in it a Google form with, a place to ask questions or make a comment that can be addressed either in person, or maybe we can have a way to say, here's my question. I really don't want to have the conversation in a public forum, but I would love a phone call
Mm-hmm.
to talk it through. So if you can loop me in on those dates with enough, just a couple days lead time, Patrice and I can certainly help get that word out.
That would be great. That would be great. And we also talked about parents. Is it Parents Square? If
Yes,
we can
that's
send
what we
it out on
use.
that.
Yep, that's what
Um,
we use to communicate.
Right. So that was the biggest thing. We really want to get the word out more. Chris, am I missing anything?
No, I think you got it all. The web pages too was the other spot. So web pages, Parent Square,
Mm.
ETAs, social medias. And then I think we talked about like alternating in person and virtual so that we don't lose that in person, but we add it.
All right.
Thank you. That's great. Any other questions or comments for the Community Engagement Committee? Okay, moving on to the Research Subcommittee.
All right. Can you hear me? I want to make sure.
Yes, we can. Hi, Shaka.
Hi, how are you?
Um,
So let's see. We met on the 11th at 7:15. It was our first meeting. And we really wanted to kind of level set what has been done already in last year's committee, and seeing where we could build upon that. So what was mentioned was that a previous member, Nick Harris, had helped create a survey of DEI programs and missions across the state, and through I believe it's the New York Association of State Psychologists. And we didn't really have the data from that, so we wanted to find out where that was and see if we can build from there. We also talked about building a resource group, building resources for DEI for everyone to be able to utilize. We talked also about language and communication, having different ways to communicate with parents and all of our stakeholders besides our normal channels. We talked about like Language Line, or having some type of access to other languages. Let's see. We also, what was brought up, and we're not sure that's going to be something that we're able to get to this year based on budgetary limitations, was potentially a climate survey. I think Progressive Partners was used in the past. Potentially a parent survey. And we had a couple tasks to go back, and I know Derek was going to check up on the information with Nick Harris to see where those results were for that. And Tyann, I'm probably butchering the name, Tyann did share the CRE resource calendar from her school district with us, and it had more resources that we could potentially use for our committee. And I think that's it. Eric, please hop in if you have anything I missed, or anyone else. Nina, anyone else?
Thank you, Shaka.
I think you did a great job. Thank you.
So just to basically reiterate, so we're waiting to hear on the information from Dr. Harris in terms of what he was able to get from the survey. And then, the point being that people in the community definitely appreciate the opportunity to voice their feelings, and using that to add into where we feel that the committee can go next, like as almost create a new goal setting piece for us from that feedback once we receive that feedback.
Yes, I did talk to Nick Harris, and we are going to meet to talk about the things we bulleted, and he did express an interest in rejoining us this year as well.
Great. Thank you. It's wonderful. So any other questions for the subcommittee for research? Okay. And next up is the subcommittee for student voice.
I can talk on behalf of Student Voice. So during our last meeting, we talked about our goals for the year. One of them was about like clubs and how they need to be more recognized and how they need to receive like more support, because a lot of students like nowadays especially, they find it difficult to make it to club meetings, especially because of like the amount of load of schoolwork and other priorities. So we talked about some possible solutions for this. We also talked about other ways students could express themselves without being scared, without like actually like giving a speech or anything. For instance, maybe we could have like a display case at GHS filled with like student-made artwork or photography, videos, poetry, etc. Anything that would, help them like share their experiences without being scared. And to add on, we also had this other interesting idea about having times during the school day, maybe during like lunch mods or during homeroom, where students can have open discussions where they can talk about problems they face or experiences or about the school environment in general. And lastly, we ended our meeting by discussing about the the current student climate at GHS, especially the way it's changed within like recent world events that have been going on. Like a lot of students aren't aware of what's happening, and it's something that's changing many of our lives, both directly and indirectly. So we talked about how we could possibly maybe incorporate like class discussions or have quarterly assemblies to help educate the student body. And something that we thought that we need to do immediately is to address the fear Jewish students went through in the past couple of weeks, and to do more as a school to help with this, because what we did to address the issue was simply just not quite enough. Thank you.
Wow, there's so much there. Thank you. That's so many wonderful things and ideas and thoughts. I love the idea of the student expression, an opportunity for students to find ways to have a voice, like literally by putting something where people can view it. I also agree that communication of these types of issues absolutely need to be made. And I definitely think it would warrant a discussion in that area as well. So I think that I'm very proud and brave to, I'm proud of you, and it's very brave of you to bring those up. And I think that those are things that we definitely should dive into a little bit. Thank you. Anybody else, any comments? Blanca.
So thank you so much, Shreya. That was a great report out. I do have a question. So it's been a couple weeks, I think, since that meeting, Derek. And so I just wondered if there has been any follow-up, because I certainly did feel like the comments and the conversation was really important, but that some things really should have been addressed at this point, or I'd like to just know what has or hasn't taken place.
Derek?
Sure, I'm still getting used to this. Okay, yes, we actually had a few conversations inside of with the administration to talk about ways we can set up a student forum and address students in general. So we've already talked to people, and they said they'd be willing to step up and to help students create that platform where they can express themselves. Originally tonight, Noah Kaufman was going to report out. We had decided in the group to have a student rotating chair to help report out for the Student Voice Committee and give students a voice. Noah had a volleyball game tonight, so Shreya stepped in last minute and gave an excellent summation of what has taken place. And Noah also requested a meeting with a bunch of us, and we talked with him specifically about what Jewish students were facing, and he shared his concerns and his fears, and expressed his emotions about the incident, and we thanked him for coming out and doing that with us, and we were looking forward to working together as we move forward to create those forums where we can have these discussions. So I'm hoping that this will be part of what will fold into the Student Voice Committee, and that will continue this work moving forward.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or reactions? I just want to say I again echo all of the thoughts that have been made and said here. I feel that the situation and some of the things that we discussed earlier as well is that when students aren't given facts or news or information, then they run with stories, and the social media takes over, and students share things that they are emotionally affected by without necessarily knowing what is going on, and it can amplify and create situations that can become problematic within and outside of the school building. So I think it absolutely is the duty of the school and the teachers to try and help to inform students before things can become misinformation, and that can kind of build to an unhealthy crescendo among kids. So I agree. And I think this is definitely things that are obviously a difficult conversation for DEI as well, because we want to make sure that people are feeling validated. So it's not an easy topic or discussion, but definitely one that needs to be made. Mike?
As a building leader, I'm aware of all sides of the conflict right now. I'm aware of both sides of the issue. So I have to support students on both sides of the issue. In addition, I'm also worried about students who have armed forces, parents who serve in the military, who might still be deployed, who also may need support. So I think from my lens, there are lots of students who need to be supported during this time. So I just don't want to be short-sighted about that.
I think that this could be also a good segue later once we talk about the learning component as well, and we can move forward from that. I think that will be a good starting point, Mike, what you're speaking to. So I agree. So I guess that would, if there's any other comments, we can hear those first, and then otherwise we can move into DEI in action. Okay, so Derek, please. And it looks like yes, and so Leah and Derek, the DEI in action component, I see you're both on that, right?
Yes. One thing that is important, I think that we've done, again, been here a little over a month and a half, so I've been making my rounds to the schools. I think the most time we spend at the schools right now, it's been in the middle school, where we spend a week doing anti-hate presentations, workshops with the 8th grade, and that was an excellent experience. I really got to be able to speak to each and every 8th grader who attended that week, and we got a ton of feedback. The students did a gallery walk where they shared their opinions on statements that we had chosen of speech that they had heard in and around the school, and gave their feedback to that. And they also did a survey at the end to share also their thoughts. So we have a lot of data to go through, and it was, I guess, an opportune moment because it happened prior to the events of the past weekend. So it gave a lot of a platform for students to be able to have those discussions and speak on those, because they did write back about what their perceptions were on a host of issues in their school. So we'll be following up with Mike. There's a lot of data to go through, over 200 student responses and a lot of feedback. So that was a great time that we had, and it was thanks, Mike, for taking the initiative to pull us down and into the schools and to have that experience. I will be doing some PD later on at other schools that will be addressing on implicit bias and a few other topics. So we'll be hearing about those later. Leah has been all over the place in almost every school and has been sponsoring programs. So I want to really give her space to talk about all of the things that she has been doing lately.
Thanks, Derek. And yes, thank you, Mike, for inviting us into the 8th grade classrooms. It was a really wonderful experience, and I'm so glad that we were able to get to every single one of the 8th grade students. And several of them have been stopping by my office, which is really wonderful to have come in. But I think part of it's because I have candy as well. Yeah, so I've been able to join several of the schools, actually all of them, in one capacity or another. And some things I've done so far is I was really happy to join the high school 9th grade class when they went to the 9/11 exhibit at the New York State Museum. They have a 9th grade, common learning experience, and so that was really great to be able to join the class for that. Tomorrow at the high school, there's going to be a student forum, and then on Friday, Derek and I are going to be joining students in this group across the Capital Region called Elevating Student Voices. And so this is the first year that Guilderland is participating in it. And I think that pretty much all the schools in the Suburban Council are going to be a part of it. So we're bringing students to this on Friday for the first time. So excited to, learn and share more about that as we continue with that. I was also, this week is Longhouse Week at Linwood Elementary. And so I was with, a shuttle and helping build, and any of those individuals who, have gone through Linwood know that this is a longstanding tradition. And I really loved hearing from the curator of the exhibitions of the museum, Colette, who, there was a lot of learning about not just the history of local Indigenous people, but also like knowing that they're learning about present day as well, so I think that's really important. And I actually added a couple of additional resources that I shared, supplied by Brenda Johnson, who's a teacher from Browning High School in Montana and also a member of the Blackfoot tribe, the Blackfeet tribe. And then Mike Jetty, who's from the Montana Education for All, and he's a member of the Dakota tribe. Just a couple of different books and other ideas, and maybe even like full lessons that like teachers could potentially use if they, wanted to kind of get more into that. So, and I shared some of this information with a Farnsworth Middle School teacher who is doing some different bulletin boards every month. And then next month is National or Native American Heritage Month. So she wanted, some ideas for books to maybe display. And she also had this, maybe a question for people that she wanted to know about, how are other schools in the district celebrating holidays, especially in December, what's happening in each of the schools when that month comes up. And so I kind of gave her an article from the National Association of Education of Young Children about the idea of like learning about holidays, celebrating versus learning versus celebrating them. Like, what's the difference between that, and how can we, learn about different holidays? And so what does that mean? So that's maybe like, I don't know, a conversation that people might want to have. And then I guess the thing that just happened yesterday, which was really exciting, was an author study with Kwame Alexander. And that spanned through all of the elementary schools and also every single one of the houses in the middle school. So the librarians, Anne, Julie, Dee, Julie, and Sarah, so wonderful. Prior to doing this virtual visit with Kwame Alexander, who's, this very well-known author of young people's literature and picture books and, even adult books that, we all love. They read the books, they watched videos of him, and many of the books have since been signed out by the students. In the middle school, Joanne, Sherry, Rob, and Meg were the leaders of each house, and Roy and Maura and Lisa were really wonderful to help put this together. And students or teachers actually did many author studies with the students where they learned about and sampled some of Kwame's books. They learned about his life experiences and how he became a writer, and also considered how his biography compares to their own. So it was a really wonderful experience. Kwame read part of his book. He had some special guests, an author. His name is Byron Graves, Native American author, and also one of the actors from The Crossover, his Disney Plus TV show, talking about writing and the power of writing, gave instructions to blackout poetry, answered questions from students, and then he surprised one school in the nation, wasn't us, sorry, and he was like there. So, that was pretty exciting. But it's been really wonderful. I've been to all of the elementary schools, and I'm housed in the middle school and head to the high school. So I really love being in all these different places, and happy and excited to do more. So thank you.
Wow, that is so many amazing things. Does anyone have any reactions to any of those incredible opportunities and activities that are currently going on? I'm just blown away. You've had me at Kwame Alexander. It's awesome. Yeah. And I love all of the different studies of the Native American heritage and the ways that, students can learn about the different groups. I think it's fantastic. Anybody have any questions or thoughts? So I'm seeing some things in the chat. I can open that up. Sorry. So great feedback. And then Beth shares some information for ADL, upcoming read aloud with Cynthia Leachick Smith, say it correctly, which will take place on Wednesday, November 29th. It's great. YA books, Unbroken. Oh, Hearts Unbroken. Sorry, will be our November monthly featured book, and several other books. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so if there's no other thoughts or comments or questions, we can move on to the next part, which is the Equity Action Plan update. So Dr. Wiles, I believe that would be you.
That is me. Thank you. So as you all know, all of our buildings have equity action plans that are being led by our equity teams that are really just taken off, and they're doing some great work. Last month, Mr. Laster gave a pretty comprehensive summary of things that had happened over the summer. So I just want to hit a couple highlights of things that the teams are continuing to do. They are, charging right ahead with the things in their plans. So I'll mention a few of them. At the high school, I know that Mike Laster mentioned last time that the entire high school is doing a equity walk exercise. You'll know that our buildings did ones with Natalie McGee when she was here, but only a small number of staff were able to participate. So at the high school, all teachers will have this opportunity. They've actually begun, and all of those visits will be wrapped up by the middle of December, and they're going to get together and share observations and best practices, and it's going very well. So that's a very exciting enterprise and a scheduling feat, to say the least, to get 150 teachers the opportunity to visit multiple classrooms to take a look. Over in, I'll just hit a couple highlights from some of our elementary buildings. Over in Linwood, they're digging deep into student achievement data to look to see how our students are doing across various subgroups around our state assessment results. We have a new platform for looking at data called Tableau, and it's very powerful, and it allows us to look very closely at data. And the data team from Linwood is digging into all of that. They've also done some really fun things with the Positivity Project. they updated their world map in the front hallway. And when I was there visiting a couple weeks ago, the word of the week was integrity, and they had integrity translated into the 30 or so languages of the children in Linwood who speak those languages, and with a map indicator to the country where they were from. So it was very, very cool, very inviting. And they're also doing some workshops with Derek, I believe, on implicit bias. So they're hard at work. At Guilderland Elementary School, they're also focusing a lot on creating a welcoming environment. And one of the things that Alan shared with me is they have, as you walk in the door, welcome written in a number of different languages, so that when that's one of our buildings with one of the most diverse backgrounds and languages, families are noticing there's my language, and it creates that connection to the school. They're also actually today kicked off their No Place for Hate work for this year with an assembly. So they're continuing on. Over at Westmere, I think we might have mentioned this last time, they actually did a second open house for the ENL families to help them become comfortable with some of the tools that we take for granted. For example, how to use Parent Square, how to use eSchool, how to navigate the school lunch cafe, the platform where you purchase lunches and all of those things. And that was very much appreciated for our families. And then over at Pine Bush, again, they are also working on their the ambiance of the building to make it more welcoming. But they've also begun a book study, and they're looking at a book called The Inclusive Mindset, and another book called Start Here, Start Now, A Guide to Anti-Bias and Anti-Racist Work in Your School Community. So they have set up their equity action team, just like their building cabinet, and they're moving right along. So those are some of the highlights. All of the buildings are fully engaged in their plan. And then kind of the cherry on the top of all of this is we have our Superintendent's Conference Day on November 1st. And the elementary buildings are in the midst of parent-teacher conferences, but our grades 6 through 12 faculty and staff will be doing department kind of work in the morning around curriculum initiatives specific to departments, but the entire afternoon is dedicated to a wide variety of mostly teacher-led or Guilderland staff-led workshops around a variety of topics related to our work around equity and inclusion. They're in the afternoon, Derek and Leah are doing an opening presentation for both middle and high school in the auditorium. And then staff will have 2 breakout sessions, each an hour, with 13 different programs to choose from in each hour. And it's a wide variety of topics. I'm super proud of the middle and high school planning teams who have been working on this since July. I know Derek and Leah have been involved. Rachel Anderson, our assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, has been like corralling all of this work into one easy to follow place. So we're very excited about what will be happening on November 1. So that's just the tip of the iceberg of some of the other things that are happening around diversity, equity, inclusion here in Guilderland.
Wow, that's so many amazing things that are going on. I love how unique and individual each of the things are that are happening in on the elementary school buildings. Very much attuned to what the people in the building, like the students, that are from those different countries, and very aware of what might be something that would be best for them. So I think that's really very special that they are very clearly aware of the students individually. Also, the Superintendent's Conference Day, that's great, with the breakout sessions following the piece. I think that's wonderful. Is there anything that the DEI committee can help facilitate with that? I know that obviously we are in great hands with, you know, the leadership, but does anyone else, do you need any help from our committee to facilitate that as well? I know you guys are very well established, but is there anything that we can do to help you?
That is a wonderful offer. I'm not sure, but I will certainly bring that back to Rachel Anderson and Derek and Leah or Mike. If you think of things where we could use some help, we are always happy for assistance.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the only concern is how can we feed a lot of people in 45 minutes at the high school? Because we have like, between the two faculties, we have close to 200 people. So that's the challenge. So if anybody has any ideas about that, like we're trying to get food trucks, we're trying to get microwaves. So if anybody has any ideas about that, that's what could help.
Yeah, I think food trucks are usually a pretty desired choice from the teacher perspective, but they get a little chaotic with organization. So been there.
I agree, Chris. I think we can do like a PB&J like table or factory and see what happens.
I also like the idea of uncommon grounds. I think there's some kind of a commonality there. You can thread through a bagel somehow. I don't know. Whatever I could do. Any other questions or comments? It's wonderful to see all those things happening. So thank you, Leah and Derek and Mike and Dr. Wiles. So that brings us to the learning component. Derek is going to be facilitating that with us tonight. There was a video shared out. Did everyone have a chance to view that video? No, talk about, I'll give the floor to Derek in that.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Yes, this video, Leah and I shared it with the 8th graders when we did the hate speech presentations and workshops and got some feedback from them, and it went over very well. This is a talk about empathy and some of the core things to being culturally responsive, core skill sets that we want people to be able to develop. One of the premier ones, our foundational ones, I should say, is empathy. So we wanted to start with that and really discuss really what that is. So I think this clip in a short amount of time does that. So I'm going to get out of the way and let Leah play it so we can see it. It's only 3 minutes long, and then we'll talk about what you see and what your responses to it are afterwards.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Okay, so what are some of your initial reactions to the clip? What resonated for you about the clip?
Do you want us to jump in or do you want us to raise our hands? Now you're muted. That's funny.
Derek, you're
Yes,
muted.
you can. Yeah, you can just jump in. Your hand was already up.
Yeah. The thought of not trying to solve the problem for people, and I think it's so natural that when people bring us their grief and their sadness, that we try to. I definitely try not to minimize, but I try to like help them find solutions, and sometimes that's not what's necessary in that moment. It's just listening and being part of that. And I just did a presentation with 6th graders today where we were talking. I thought of this video because I was talking about the difference between sympathy and empathy, and kids saying like, yeah, I don't want you to fix it. I just want to complain about it. And that's valid. It's valid to want somebody to listen and not problem solve because you're not there yet. And that can be really hard because we want to fix. And sometimes all we have to do is hold space for people.
Definitely. Mary, I saw your hand was up.
Yeah, the part about, excuse me, really trying to make people feel better. You know, I think piggybacking what Chris was saying is, I think that's just like a natural reaction. We want them to feel better. So what can we say that will help them get through it when actually all they need is for us to listen?
All right, that's definitely true. Let me making sure my mic is on this time. But when people are going through difficult or very challenging situations and their emotions are so high, the first thing they need to do is process those emotions. You know, it is very difficult to have a rational conversation or, to solve or to do any of those things, like Chris said, to take that next step until those emotions have been processed. That's why I think in the beginning she said sympathy disconnects people. I don't know how many have ever been in a discussion with somebody and someone said, I'm sorry, what else do you want me to do? That's sympathy doesn't really drive the connection. The person wants you to understand how they're feeling, not necessarily be concerned with apologies right now. It's so quick and easy to say, afterwards, oh, I'm so sorry that's what you went through. But the person really needs to hear is that you felt the way I felt when this happened, and processing those emotions is a very critical part of this process, and it breeds connection. And once there's a sense of connection, we can begin to start that ball rolling to move forward together. And I think some of the problems is that before we've adequately processed some things, we're trying to get to that point of moving forward together without having done that. And sometimes that can cause more problems because people don't feel like they've been heard yet to move forward. So this piece is, it tries to draw that out. Did anybody notice anything else in the video that stuck out to them?
Got some hands up there, Derek. I think Seema and then Beth.
Do you want me to just jump in, Derek?
Yes,
Okay.
Seema, you're up next, and then Beth after her.
I was just gonna say, in the video there was one piece about there's sometimes to recognize that there's nothing you can say that will make the person feel better. And I just thought, with everything that's going on in the world, and having so many friends around me impacted in a way that I don't fully understand, but the piece about connection and just listening to me took me some time to figure out, like, I would think I would know how to do some of these things, but it took me some time to realize, like, that is just what I needed to do for some people, because I don't know what the right words are. There might not be any words that will help the person feel better, but just to listen and also acknowledge that there's things that I don't understand. And I love how she said to reserve judgment, because it's very easy, or we like to all judge. So I thought it was great. And I love that it was short and we were able to watch it. So thank you.
No problem. You hit on two very important things. Words do fail us. And when people are experiencing big emotions and we're not, or we walk into a situation where we don't know what's going on, it feels awkward and strange, and we're trying to figure out how to respond. And I think it's natural for people to, we don't plan to be in these situations. So when they come upon us, to take that step back and say, let me listen, let me calibrate, let me find out what's going on. Those are great observations. Beth, you had.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say that it made me think about, like, times where this is applied to myself, and being the person who has shared something. And when people are sharing, they're vulnerable too, right? And so the last thing that you want to hear back from somebody is that phrase, like, well, at least, and then whatever the end of that sentence is. And I've heard that so many times for different things that I've dealt with in my life, especially related to, like, my children and childbirth and things like that. And I think it's important for people to build that skill set of, like, sometimes all what someone wants is for you to say, like, I'm so sorry, like, how can I be helpful? Or, you can come and talk to me anytime, or I'm here to support you. Because trying to rationalize it, or given, that at least answer doesn't really necessarily help that person feel any better. And so that last part about, it's about building the connection and not necessarily about what you say, I think is so important.
Hi, and I didn't realize I was unmuted, so I'm sorry if I made any noises over here. Sorry about that. So I just want to say, and I'll take my hand down. Yeah, I definitely think that there's so much to say here. I know that when it comes to teaching, this is a major thing that we try to do with listening, and also develop those connections with students, because students can definitely see through teachers if they don't feel like they're being genuine or listening to them. And I've experiences all the time with students who may start off with, like, their guard up, and then trying to let them know that you're there for them by connecting with them is a huge thing. And I think that when it comes to understanding where people are coming from, like, given the situation of today, it absolutely speaks to that. Except I also have to just say that I think we have to remember that there's two different things happening. And I just have to say this, and I'm sorry if I'm saying something that people may not want to hear, but given the situation at hand, yes, there are people who are feeling different things, but it is also something that originated from anti-Semitism. And I think that it's something that speaks to an issue that is like thousands of years of reoccurring. And I think that that's something that we can't just gloss over as two different sides, because there's other factors here. So I completely feel for all of the families that are losing their loved ones. There's no way to say that, you can absolutely, my heart goes out to every single child and family that's feeling a loss. But there's a whole other piece here that I think we as a DEI committee have to make sure we keep in mind. And that's that what's happening in our country as a result of this. Right. And where do we touched on anti-Semitism last year, because our country has already seen an increase in those attacks. And I don't know if anyone knows people from the city, but what's happening down there, I mean, it's a whole different situation than we may be even seeing up here. But I hope it doesn't come up here the same level. But the world and our country is heading a situation that we all need to be aware of. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be compassionate and empathic to everyone involved, but there's this other component that drove the situation that caused the situation that we're in right now, the immediate situation. Yes, you can say 75 years, you could say thousands of years of a region of geographic conflict. That's a separate situation of the anti-Semitism that drove the current situation at hand. And I just have to say that because I think as a committee, we need to address that as well.
I just want to add from a student perspective that this is such an important message to spread, because especially like we're talking about the current events of the world, it's important for kids to learn how to respond quickly. And I feel like a lot of people are just scared to talk about these types of things because they think they don't know anything, or they don't want to offend anyone. But it's not about that. It's about just being able to say, yeah, I understand, I'm here to listen. And just teaching this to kids is important because we have like a climate in this school that like no one wants to talk about it, but that doesn't help anything. So, and also the things that people are posting on social media, if we try to teach kids, like, it's not about picking sides, it's not about posting things that are like trying to come up with a solution. It's just being there for each other. And they can use this message in school, but also outside of school when they're talking to other people. And yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Tamika, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. And yeah, so this is a very diverse community, right? And so one thing that I want to, just like we're all raising great points here, is that I think that we need to be mindful with the type of community we have, and not always knowing someone's background, where their family comes from, families that are affected, right? And so there's anti-Semitism, there's Islamophobia, there's anti-Black. And so we need to create a safe space where we're recognizing humanity as one and not separating or dividing any type of religion, race, or reason, right? And so that's the bigger picture, and that's what we need to teach our children, and that's the type of space that we need to create, because there are so many mixed emotions, there's so many mixed feelings, and when you have that, it continuously creates fiction. And so trying to take a step back and saying, we're people, we are people, we are very diverse, we are very different. But this is a place for all of us, and we have to somehow step out of these boxes that we keep creating for ourselves. And I think that's the important piece. It's if we're keep checking these boxes, we're going to stay in these boxes, and we have to learn how to help our children think outside the box.
One thing the students on the Student Voice Committee kept coming back to was this sense of fear and sense of apathy. They said either the students don't know, or they don't care, or we don't know, but we need to be able to have that voice. And whether it's, finding that voice is really developing that sense of, getting that empathy to get them to want to move forward, to want to take action, to want to connect. And we need to foster an environment where people can start building connections with each other, that they'll want to learn more about each other. And we get things from alternative sources when we're not talking to each other. We need to create more dialogue. And I think the students are really trying to push us in the direction of creating those forums so that they can connect with each other and talk with each other and empathize with each other, so they don't have to rely on the internet or other places to get their information, but they can get it from living, breathing people that they're connected to and connected with. And, the more that we can develop those skills to be able for them to be able to have those conversations, and our own skills for us to be able to be comfortable having those conversations and to unpack, whatever luggage and baggage is there that is impacting these situations. It starts from a foundation of having the ability to have empathy, to see the person as an extension of yourself and not as an other that we don't have to care about or be seen or to know. And so I think it's important that in finding our voice that we take that step back. And Chris, I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot or not, but you had shared a poem with me prior to this meeting that was almost like you were pulled it out of my head in terms of what we were talking about today. And if you want to even share what you shared with me, if you feel comfortable.
So I wake up in the morning to the news, which is probably the worst thing to wake up to every morning. And right now it's really, truly the worst thing to wake up to every morning. When you talk about apathy, that's the scariest part to me, that we don't care, that our kids don't think that it matters if they care. So this was on NPR the other morning. It's a Israeli writer, Etgar Keret, who typically writes fantastical short stories, but he lives in Tel Aviv. And since the war started, he's only been able to write in brief bursts, tapping out his thoughts on his iPhone. This is, I will put the link in there if you want to hear it in his own voice. I believe it's a him. Yes, it's a him. Signs of life. So now close your eyes and try to stop being angry. Try to stop raging at all those who deserve your righteous fury. Close your eyes and allow yourself, just for a moment, to simply feel the pain, to hesitate, to be confused, to feel sorrow, remorse. You still have your whole life to spend persecuting, avenging, reckoning. But for now, just close your eyes and look inward like a satellite hovering over a disaster zone, searching for signs of life. A lot has been taken away from you, but you're still a human being. Wounded, bloodied, angry, hurting, frightened, drowning in sorrow, but still human. Take a deep breath and try to remember the feeling, because you know that a minute from now, when you open your eyes again, it will be gone. I'll put that in the chat.
If I could also just say, just to kind of go along with that, and Anne Frank, right, wrote the poems that we referenced. Like, I still believe that people are still good at heart, right, at heart. So I think that, and here this was like a month before she was discovered and then turned over. I think that what we're talking about is absolutely important to try to relate to the human in there. And I just want to say that, like, I do believe that empathy is something that helps us to understand where people are coming from. But I believe this is a multifaceted situation. And I think that we need to, people mentioned that, Derek, you were mentioning that students need to know that in order to have the open discussion, there has to be empathy first. So how do we help them to do that? So we give them the tools, right? So how do we bring that? How does our committee help them to get to that point? Because they're going to get these stories that are being sent around, and they're going to create their own narrative. And when there has been terrorist attacks in the world separate from this situation, there haven't been a question of two sides. And I just know that this is different. And I'm asking the people why this is different. Because when there happens, like, for example, in the situation of ISIS with Iraq and Fallujah, there were civilians lost. And that's terrible. It's tragic. But there was not the same reaction in the world. This reaction is different, and I'm asking people, why is this reaction different? Blanca?
So I can't answer your question, Nina. I can just say that I can hear the pain in your voice, and I am sorry. I don't know how to answer that question. That's not why I raised my hand, but I will build upon what you said and say that um, I see this situation as worsening, and I pose to the committee, are we doing enough? Or to the district, are we doing enough? Is it enough to send an email out with resources when people are clearly feeling divided in our community and are hurting? And we've heard it from our students. We are here to serve our students. Our students are telling us now for the second time that they're struggling with this. So I'm just wondering, what is it going to take for us to do something else? And what can we do? Because it's hard work and I don't know the answer for sure. I wouldn't even know how to go about it. But DEI is supposed to be hard, otherwise it's performative.
Thank you. Beth?
I just wanted to ask a question, a clarifying question, Derek. The Student Voices Forum, was it just to talk about what's going on in the Middle East right now in Israel, or was it an open forum about anything?
The student voice was to get the goals of students for the year.
Okay.
So in the course of having our discussion about student groups and finding their voice, I asked them about the current climate, and they talked about what they were experiencing here and now. And I think it's important that we're aware of this. And, you know, when we do this work, if we're in it for the long haul, we have to use all of the skills at our disposal. We're not necessarily going to solve the level of polarization that has been happening in this country for the last 30 to 40 years. This is the next rise and fall of the next generational set of challenges that lie before us. And it's all across this world. There's coups going on in countries across this world. There are people who are hurting all over the place. And developing the skills to address these questions, to me, you know, begins with that ability to take perspective, that ability to empathize with people, to see the need to even solve the problem or to address the problem, or to even want to develop the knowledge and the skills that bring to bear on these situations. So, you know, if people are apathetic, no matter what skills you bring to the table or what knowledge you bring, they're not going to be engaged enough to empower themselves to go out and do anything. So we have to build, you know, scaffold the skills that they need to be able to skillfully address these situations. I think we have some teachers here, some strong people in our own community who have been having difficult conversations. And there's a club and a class that talks about students being able to find their voice and have difficult conversations. That teacher has wanted to come forward and help with this particular situation as well. People are here who want to step up, and I don't think for them it's about taking sides. I think for them it's about helping people find their voice and find community and find ways to work together to build bridges and heal the multiple situations that we have going on around us. I'm a fan of Malcolm X. I know some people may or may not be, but one thing he said about progress was that, you know, if you stick a knife in my back, you know, 6 inches and pull it out 3, that's not progress. If you pull it all the way out, it's not progress. Progress is healing the wound. So sometimes we have to look at the entire process and look at what skills we're sowing into the young people around us, and look at and model the type of behavior that we want them to be able to share, and the connections we want them to create, so that they can go out there and say, okay, what can we join hands together and work on this problem together? This is what we want to do. And teachers can join with them, because there's a lot of fear out there right now, along with the apathy, that teachers don't want to touch these topics. Students don't want to touch these topics. Like, we have to build the skill sets for everyone to get past the uncomfortable feelings and to drive toward doing this work on a full-time basis, you know, and get people to really buy into the work that we're doing. And it's step by step and it's inch by inch, but every every step we take is going to hopefully make it better for the next generation. It's literally why I got into this work, is that I didn't want my kids to inherit a world that I did not enough to change the situations that they're going to inherit. And so part of what they're inheriting has to be this ability to feel for other people, to recognize their emotion, to perspective take, and to learn other perspectives, and to be able to use that knowledge to start to build bridges and heal. And to the extent that we can do that, and the extent that we can help students develop that, I think we're on the right road. And there's not a one Band-Aid that's going to do it. It's a multifaceted solution. But before we can empower them to do anything, we have to engage them. And before we can engage them, we have to make them care. We have to motivate them. And so we have to take this step by step and build on the lessons that we've learned from doing this work, and be able to reproduce it for the next generation.
Thank you, Derek. I mean, the reason I asked the question was actually because of the last part of what you said, which is that I'm wondering if a lot of the apathy is really students being fearful. Because in the last couple of weeks, and the work that I do, I work for a predominantly Jewish organization that's a civil rights organization, and we're fielding all kinds of incidents and things coming in from schools. And even adults that I interact with in the greater community have told me, like, I haven't said anything about the ongoing crisis in Israel because I don't want to offend anybody, and I don't feel educated enough to speak on the issues. And I think that that's probably the reality for a lot of the educators too, is they don't want to step out of line and say something wrong or teach something wrong. And so I don't know how much the students are necessarily being given the space to talk about it, because maybe educators are feeling a little bit unsafe in educating about it as well. So I just kind of want to point that out to students too, is that maybe it's not apathy, it's actually just students not knowing what to say or what to do, and not wanting to, offend anybody on any side of the issue.
Thank you, everybody. I just want to make sure we have enough time for people to speak before the time runs out on us here. So if I have the order wrong, I'm sorry. So I'm seeing it on my screen. So Chris, Shaka, and Mary. So Chris, please go ahead.
I mean, what Beth just said is kind of touching on what I was thinking. A lot of people don't understand the situation. You said 30 years, 1,000 years. There's all these different timelines merging. And one of the situations I know at a middle school level, developmentally, a lot of what we're trying to teach is how to find accurate information. You're being bombarded on social media and by friends and families, and maybe your parents don't know what's going on either. How do you sift through misinformation and disinformation? Because there is very intentional spreading of inaccurate information happening. To come out informed, that's almost a full-time job as an adult. And so, I mean, I have been careful because I don't want to offend people, and I'm trying to understand the situation before I open my mouth and stick my foot in it. And then you think of kids, and some of it's apathy, some of it's ignorance, and some of it's disempowerment. They don't feel like, definitely at a middle school level, like, what does it matter what I say? I'm just reading the responses to the anti-hate rally or anti-hate conversations they had. And sometimes because kids don't feel like their voice is heard, or even if they feel it's heard, they don't think it makes a change. They don't see those incremental changes that are happening. Or even if they helped one person, that's huge. If your words can help one person, that's one person that feels better, and that's a change. So I think misinformation and disinformation, though, is a very big piece of this situation, and teaching our kids to be good consumers of knowledge, because the internet is right at their fingertips, is so very important in this situation and in a lot of situations.
And I think that speaks to DEI in general, right? Trying that all groups that are marginalized, there's a lot of misinformation across the board. So we do have a role in that. Sure. Thank you. Shaka?
You guys have said so many great things today. I started to put my hand down after Derek started talking. But yeah, other people started talking too, so I was like, nope. I just, to add to all of these things, I know it definitely, and I'm not 100% knowing of what goes on in, the schools and things like that. But there is something going on. And I think that inaction is not great, but you also have to be prepared. You know, when you are getting ready to do something, you have to be prepared. You know, you can't just go in there and you know, like Brene Brown just said, with that mindset that we're going to solve a problem, right? You know, like we're talking about empathy today, right? So how does that affect DEI? What is our message going to be when we go in there? Because we're honestly, what can we do other than acknowledge and try and support our children to be able to be, like Derek was saying, you know, be able to think for themselves and be able to support the building of a better world for themselves and their children. So, you know, sometimes I just feel like we really have to be prepared for this. Are we ready to have these conversations? And if we're not ready to have these conversations, who is? Because you can do more damage going in there unprepared. Speaking as someone that is part of a marginalized community, I've dealt with people coming to me and being like, oh, well, you know, too bad, so sad. But also, you know, look at how great you're doing, you know, and that takes away from who I am and my life experiences and my journeys and all those things that make me and my identity. And, you know, we've talked a lot tonight about identity and what children need, that to be able to be safe. And if they're not feeling safe, psychologically safe, physically safe, otherwise, they're not going to be able to receive what we're trying to do. So that's all I wanted to say. Sum that up nice and short for you.
Thank you very much. And that completely speaks to many groups. So thank you for representing those. Mary?
Mary, you had your hand up.
Yes, this came up at our meeting last night with our student rep, Anjana. And what I was hearing, Chris and Leah, please, you know, jump in. What I was hearing from her was students are looking for a safe place to talk. They're looking, as she said, I think it was in an English class, finally a teacher let them talk about what's going on in the world with respect for everyone's opinions in a safe place. You know, Shreya, is that what students are looking for?
I think like part of my summary for like what we talked about last time, I think having a safe space to talk about these issues is definitely something we're looking for, because like I can share a story actually. Like last week, or not last week, like after we met up for student voice subcommittee, I asked my history teacher if he could take just a couple minutes to explain like the events that are happening around the world, because you know, like he's a history teacher, so I thought, you know, it would be like one of the best ways to talk about the historical standpoint of the event, but also like give us more information about that. And he just said that, you know, he has plans for like their class, so it might not be the best to talk about the situation right now, and like maybe he'd think about talking about it in like future classes. It's been like 2 weeks. He's never once mentioned, you know, anything that's happening like on the news or anything. So I was just like a little disappointed with that. And I know there are clubs like Civil Conversations and like other clubs that talk about these things, but like I said earlier, like a lot of students have other priorities and they can't make it to these club meetings. So I think if we had something during the school day where we could go and we could talk about these things, you know, even if it's just with other students or if it's with teachers, that would be great. It's a great way to educate other students about this issue, and also like help other students feel that they're not alone, you know, that their voices are heard. And yeah.
Right. And maybe this is where the whole discussion we were having about empathy and how can we use that to help our students. I don't have the answers, you know, and as for the things Nina broke up, you know, my heart breaks with with everything that's going on. But I understand that students, they feel the need to talk about these things and they want to be heard and not necessarily get answers per se. And is that something Derek, can this committee help at all?
Before I answer that, Varshini had her hand up, so I want to be able to speak before I come back in.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that students look to teachers so much when we need information or we want guidance. And I have my one English teacher who has talked about this, the situation multiple times. She spent multiple classes on what's going on, and she's given us resources. And if we can have every teacher do that, or have it required for every teacher, just have something available that they can give to students or talk to students about, because I mean, teachers are our role models. So, and I just want to also say that maybe we could have some type of assembly, maybe not the entire school, but like small groups where where kids can share their perspectives and talk about what's going on in their lives if they want to, and then we can have big discussions about it, just to give other students like perspective about what's really happening, because so many kids don't know the like the situations that people are going through. They just don't understand. And if you have that, if you have people sharing their stories, their real life stories, I think you'll just put things into perspective. So I just wanted to say that.
Mike, you had your hand up.
So kudos to our amazing counseling and social worker staff, because we are dusting off our sense of belonging survey that we will send out to all students, which basically is asking the question of whether or not they have a trusted adult at FMS that they could talk to, and whether or not they need somebody else or someone else to reach out to them if they need to talk about anything. So we're trying to identify students who not only are, potentially affected by the conflict in the Middle East, but, have not made a connection with anybody here at FMS. So we've done this in previous years. We just dusted off the one that we've sent out previously. So we're going to push that out to our students, and then our counselors and social workers will work to identify those kids who are telling us that, hey, I don't have a trusted adult that I can talk to at FMS, and then we're gonna see what we can do about that. So I'm excited about that effort.
Shaka, you had something here.
Oh, I was just going to add, thank you, Shreya and Varshini, because part of what I was thinking of was, what does that even look like? What's the safe space look like? I don't think that's something that we can decide. I think that's something that the student body needs to decide. We can't figure that out for them. And she really gave some ideas of things that might be support. So, I also think that's key. Nothing without us, nothing for us without us, right? So I think you got some ideas. So, just being honest and empathetic and figuring out how some of those things can work potentially,
I think the problem with these situations, I don't know if it's necessarily a problem, but what these situations do is they expose how disconnected we truly are. This is why we're focusing on that empathy, and why Mike is saying, hey, we got to look at the sense of belonging. This is the core of DEI work, is driving those connections. For me personally, when George Floyd happened, I was shocked. Not at what happened, but people's reaction, because I was like, wow, what was it about George Floyd that got everybody up in arms? Because this has been my experience for the longest time. So why are people up in arms about this now? But what ends up happening out of these situations is that it fuels connection. What ends up happening is that people start saying, who do I know that I'm connected to that I can talk about this with? So it was interesting for people from my high school life and life. I'm much older. I've been out of high school for 30 years plus. But people started reaching out and saying, we're having this discussion in our family and I don't know how to bridge this. You know, how do we talk about these issues? And you're someone I know, you talk about this stuff all the time. Let's have a conversation. So if we're looking to build these types of environments, safety is in the minds of the people who are participating. It's not a very real concept in the sense of thing. You're not going to have 100% safe space. People have to become vulnerable. Empathy makes us vulnerable because it's saying that I'm going to try even though I don't know what's going to happen on the other end of this thing. But we have to create this environment where we're approachable, where we can then begin to say, how can we get the information to these people? When things happen in Ferguson, one of my activist friends went down there with a camera crew and got involved and said, we're going to send you information back and we're going to tell you what's happening. The problem with some of these things is that when we go there, we don't know what we're going to impact. When the Black Lives Matter protests were going on, we had a student in Texas. I was part of another organization before. We had a student in Texas. They said, this is history unfolding. We want to go and see what's going on. One of the students was hit in the head with a plastic bullet and lost his life from the police. So the decisions we make and the level of connection that we want to create, they come all with risks. And we have to be able to, you know, as leaders, we have to sit there and weigh all of those things and do what's in the best interest of the people who are in our care. And we have to decide amongst ourselves, how do we create a space? How do we connect to people? How do we connect them to people where they can talk? You know, I have friends who are members of Beta Israel. I have friends who are Limba people. I have friends who are in, have been involved with activist generations in a plethora of different organizations. I do that because I had to empathize at one point and we created a relationship. And these are the things that we need to help teach young people, is how to reach out and bridge and find these relationships so that we can get information that we can weigh, that we can sift, and that we can figure out how we want to make an impact. We're not always going to be the ones going down there and with the placards are the ones who are going to go and be directly involved. But we want to figure out, how can I have an impact? How can I share my connection? And, you know, our leadership bears the weight of that. You know, our principals, we need to figure out, how can we support you in doing this? Our counselors, our teachers, how can we support you so that you feel comfortable doing this? Because at the center of all of this are our students and their well-being. And we want to help facilitate those conversations. And it begins with that ability to perspective take and to get to know people and to connect. And when we can do that, we've taken a step forward, because people say, oh, okay, they empathize with me. I'll be more likely to come back and talk with them now. I'll be more likely to reach out, because these people have made themselves approachable and they've shown themselves safe. They've been vulnerable. They've opened themselves out. And that's a difficult thing for some people to do, but that's the challenge of this work, is opening yourself up. And people who are scared, I'm sorry to get a negative reaction, you're not going to go far with this work with that type of attitude. You know, it just doesn't work. You have to be vulnerable. And if you step out with an empathetic eye, you're less likely, a hand, I should say, you're less likely to get that swatted away or to get a negative reaction. So we're trying to build tools in people that will help them create the relationships they need to get the information that they need to be of service to others. And when we can sort of balance that out, we're moving in the right direction. And empathy, it sounds good on the surface, but it takes work to actually sit back and actually be a listener without trying to say, oh, this happened to me, and interject our own feelings. And so it's a skill set I think it's good that we start off with. There's a lot others hopefully we'll be talking about along the way. But like that poem that was shared by Chris, sometimes you need to take a step back, breathe. And then these things are still going to be happening. The world is still going to spin, but you need to process these emotions to be able to be of service to anybody. And it doesn't come through sympathy. It comes through empathy, in my estimation.
Yep.
So thank you, everyone.
100%. That's a great way to start. Thank you. Should we, Varshini, and then probably should wrap up our
Yes.
evening for tonight.
Yes.
But no, I think that we are off to a great start. Sounds those are some great things to lead us with as we have many things to figure out as we go through the year. Thank you. And Varshini?
I just want to quickly add that a lot of the activist clubs at GHS are already having these conversations and are already opening themselves up with members, and a lot of the officers are already doing this work. So maybe the administration can work with the officers and try to create an event where all the clubs can come together and talk about big world issues like this that are affecting so many people, because we already have so much experience. We've already been talking for years about issues like this. And I think just having that support, we just need support. A lot of the clubs just need support to have that area to meet together and talk about big things like this. So just want to bring that up.
Okay, so thank you, everyone. This was quite a very fulfilling and in-depth conversation, which it sounds to me like we have a lot of things to unpack as we go through the year. So I just want to say I think we're ready for the end of the evening tonight. So do I have a motion to adjourn? Shaka, thank you, and Tamika, are you a second there? Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Derek, and everyone and Dr. Wiles and Leah for leading us as well. Good night.
Good night, everyone.